Thanks for checking out this movie review video, and this is for the 1972 giallo film The Murder Mansion, which is available on Shudder when I'm doing this review video, but it's also a part of Volume 3 of the Forgotten Gialli that were put out by Vinegar Syndrome. I own the first two volumes, and I hadn't seen anything from 3 until I started reviewing them off of what was on Shudder. This is the third of the films in their third volume, and then they also have Volume 4, which I'll be doing that one. If you didn't notice, I'm trying something new with some LED colored lighting behind me. It's actually red over here and blue over here. Blue's very easy to see, but the red ends up coming off more pink because of the camera and also because of it kind of leaking into the blue. But it's hopefully an interesting aesthetic. Let me know what you think about it. And also if, because of that, the lighting on me is too low. So you can just let me know. Should be relatively fine, though. But anyway, let's talk about The Murder Mansion. Directed by Francisco Lara Polop, who also did Perversion, Climax, Christina, and The Monk. Haven't seen any of those, obviously. Written by Louis G. de Blain, who also wrote Black Story, Creeping Death, The White, the Yellow, and the Black, and also Antonio Troiso, who wrote Queens of Evil, The Designated Victim, Knife of Ice, and Beyond the Door. Some that I've watched and reviewed there. I've watched and reviewed Knife of Ice and Beyond the Door, which I like. Knife of Ice, good film. Beyond the Door, so bad it's good film. This film was mainly shot in a studio. Even the cemetery and the mansion were constructed for the actual film, which, if you know that going into, and maybe even if you don't know going into it, you can see how it looks like it's done on in a studio. You know, it looks fabricated, but it also looks good. And I'm assuming that's how they were able to get the fog to really cooperate with them as well, because it's more of a contained area. And the fog is great in this. I love the way they use fog in this film. It's very, very cool. Alternate titles for this film included Maniac Mansion, which was a great video game back in the day, Exorcism Mansion, The Scream, This House is Too Crowded, which seems funny to me, and Let's Kill Some People. That one's just the most, like, lazy title, I think. The opening credits for this film, visuals and audio, actually invoke a really witchy vibe, with the intense fire, with the woman kind of laughing, and foreboding music going over it, which makes sense because then there's later this story that Martha ends up telling when everyone gets to the mansion. It just looked like a house to me, but I'll call it a mansion because the title does. But when everyone gets to the mansion, she tells the story of her mother, who I believe she said like died in a car accident with her chauffeur, and her mother was a witch, basically, supposedly. So it sets you up immediately with that fire and the foreboding music and the laughing to be like in the mindset of like something supernatural, something witchy. And I enjoy films that do this, where they have it seem like there's something supernatural at play here, but then they switch it on you, and in the end, it's actually nothing supernatural. It's actually just, you know, in this case, Ernest trying to drive his wife mad because he's kind of done with her. Yeah, but I like those types of things. I ended up liking this film more than I thought it would too, than I thought I would as well. So I was pleasantly surprised with this one. This is another one that I've watched thus far through the 3 volumes of Forgotten Gialli that I was like, wow, how has this not already gotten a release before? Because it's pretty good. And it looks great. Like, it's very visually pleasing. It's very well shot. It looks really polished. The set designs are outstanding. And the story is compelling. It's fun. It moves at a good clip. It's less than an hour and a half. Like, how wasn't this picked up prior to Vinegar Syndrome? I'm not trying to bash Vinegar Syndrome because I really love what they do, and they recently got titles like Roadhouse and Amityville Horror, so they're, getting a little, even bigger titles, and I love what they do, but I just would have thought someone would have scooped this up prior. Because it just like My Dear Killer, which is in Volume 2, I was surprised with that one too. I was like, why had no one snatched this up? Had George Hilton in it, but anyway. I don't want to go too far off on that. Let's get back to The Murder Mansion. The car and motorcycle jockeying on the road takes a lot of time. Although I will say this, it's visually pleasing because they shot it really well. It's a cool sequence. So I did enjoy that about it. But It did take a long time. I was like, is this going to be like the whole movie? Is this extremely important? And it didn't even really end up being all that important. The only thing it really does is just kind of show that Porter's a jerk, basically. Like, that's basically all it ends up showing, is that Porter's a jerk for the most part. The hitchhiking lady is very trusting of anyone willing to give her a ride, that being the character of Laura. She was obviously takes the ride from Porter first because he picks her up first, and then she decides he's a jerk because he keeps putting his hand on her leg, which obviously is not something that anyone would really be, well, not anyone, but barely anyone would really be interested in. And then she very gladly accepts the motorcycle ride with Fred, who ends up being like the smartest person in the entire film. And literally the character everyone looks to do pretty much anything in this. I was just like, oh, he's the only one with some brains and abilities, is what it seems like. So, but, yeah, but she was so trusting. I was just like, is this the way it was in the 70s? You just be like, I fully trust you. Because she literally says it, like, after she just met Fred. He's like, I'll give you a ride. She's like, I trust you. And it's like, why? I don't know. Elsa telling Ernest of the urgency to authenticate a signature for a document, which is very vague, feels like it'll be at the heart of what's actually going to happen in the film. I put that down as I was watching it for the first time. And yes, that is what ends up happening. It does become very important. That's part of the reason that Ernest is trying to drive Elsa mad. So it felt like that was a thing because they made sure that they really focused on that, and it was a thing. Ellen, who is having sex with Ernest, has no qualms with talking trash to his face, even though she is boning him. She's just, like, giving him crap about, like, his relationship with Elsa and everything. I don't really understand the role of Ellen because she's then pretty much gone from there. I was hoping she would kind of show up again, but she's kind of pretty pointless. I think it's only just there to, like, get some extra information about Ernest into the film and to the audience. That's my thought on it, but yeah. Kind of funny sequence with the Tremonts bickering in the car with the thick fog when they're driving. I thought the back and forth between them was done in a funny way. Now, obviously, I'm watching this dubbed, which is what's on Shudder, not in the actual, subtitled Italian, because, like I've said before, this is how I like to experience my giallo. It gives it that extra giallo-ness. But, yeah, I just like that sequence. I thought it was really funny and well done. Plus, like I said before, the fog looked great. Like, it was such thick, eerie fog. So it made everything else look even more creepy and cool, in my opinion. Fog doesn't always work extremely well, but in this film, they really made it work. The shadowy figures walking toward Elsa in the foggy cemetery looked awesome. Once again, the fog made that look really cool. And that's supposed to be Eveline, I think was her name, Clinton, and her chauffeur. It's supposed to be like the ghosts of them coming for people, basically, which is a part of the whole, scheme where they're tricking people. It didn't take long for Fred to try to suck Laura's face. And it happens when he should be focused on finding a way out of the fog. He literally does this when they're trying to find a way out. Like, he's just like they didn't even make it to the mansion yet. And he's just like, grabs her face and is just like sucking face. It's just like, okay, yeah. I mean, but this is kind of how giallo films were back then, and films in general were back then. It was very much from a male perspective. It was very much from a male sexuality aspect, and if the guy wanted it, he took it. I mean, look at the James Bond films as well. Like, it was notorious for, James just gets the woman just because he wants them, Like, women are just there to be sexualized, and it does happen in this film. But that was the time, that's what was happening. Thankfully, we've come a long way. Still have a long way to go, though. I like how both Laura and Elsa just look to Fred like he's the smartest person in the world. And then that ends up happening later when they get to the mansion, and it's just like everyone kind of looks to Fred to be like, Fred will figure it out, Fred will do this, Fred will do that. Like, he's the only one who, like, instructs people to do things for the most part. Like, he's the coordinator, he's the only guy who can think in this film, apparently, which is kind of funny to me. I love the idea of all the people being trapped at a random house near an abandoned village due to a mysterious fog. Like, just think about that. A bunch of people trapped in a house because of a very thick fog near a cemetery near an abandoned village. Like, that story setup has so much possibility, and it's so cool. And There are a lot of ways they could have gone with it and it'd still be great. I wouldn't say it was great the way they took it, but it was good. It was satisfying, and I just love the setup and the look of it. Like I was saying, it's so visually pleasing. They did so many cool things with camera work and set design and just like shot angles and framing of shots. It looks outstanding, and it's, I can't believe this wasn't picked up prior. The way everyone talks about how they got there and how mysterious everything is, it made me think they would all be revealed to end up being dead and basically in purgatory. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, okay, maybe that's where they're taking this. It gave me a little bit of like a Lisa and the Devil, Mario Bava film, Lisa and the Devil vibe. But I also got some vibes at times from the aesthetics of it and the set design of like Mario Bava's Kill Baby Kill as well, which was an outstanding film. Lisa and the Devil's good, but Kill Baby Kill is like outstanding. But yeah, I really thought with everyone there and everyone's like kind of confused about what's going on in this mysterious fog, I was just like, I have a feeling they're all going to be revealed at the end to be dead, and this literally is just like their purgatory. Like they all got into car accidents basically and died and ended up there. But it ended up not being that. I'm glad it wasn't that, because that would have been more lame than what we ended up getting. Martha is very dramatic and seems to delight in telling scary stories to total strangers. It's also odd that she is so blasé about so many people just showing up at her house. Now, it makes sense when you find out that she's in on this whole, elaborate scheme. I was going to say prank, but it's not really a prank because people die, but this elaborate scheme, she's in on it. So it makes sense from the audience perspective, but from the perspective of the other characters, they should be questioning why she's A, so creepy, B, just wants to tell them these like scary stories and she doesn't even know who they are, and C, like not at all surprised that they show up at her house, supposedly her house, and just takes them in and is just like, yeah, it's great, everyone's good. It's a weird thing. Anyway, Porter seems to be becoming unhinged as he ends up flipping out in his room in the house, and it does make you think that he has a bit of a guilty conscience, because he comes off as a potential criminal, basically. Like, doesn't he? As soon as he's around, he starts, like, seeing if he can remove the paintings. I'm assuming to look to see if there are, like, safes behind the paintings, because he, checks the place out and is like, oh, looks like some money here. Maybe I can find some laying around or some priceless jewels or something. But he does start saying, like, keep it together type stuff. And there's, like, some stuff that ends up being, like, whispered when you're seeing him that makes it sound like there's something going on with his conscience, like a guilty conscience type thing, like I was saying. I like how post-coitus, Laura is nude, yet Fred ends up being fully clothed. That seemed like an odd thing to me. Like, they're in bed in front of the fireplace on that little, mattress. They just had sex. She's still fully naked. He is fully clothed somehow. I guess it was cold there, maybe? I don't know. Like, cold for him, not for her. I don't know. It was just a weird thing that I saw, and I was just like, I'm going to bring this up. I have to bring this up. George Regaud is in this film. I was very excited to see George Regaud in it. He plays Elsa's father in the flashbacks, and if you don't know other films he's been in a lot of good giallo films, or at least ones that I enjoy, including A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, All the Colors of the Dark, Death Walks on High Heels, The Case of the Bloody Iris, Knife of Ice, and Eyeball. Those are all fun, good giallo films. And then I like this one, The Murder Mansion. So, Regaud, man. Like, if you see George Regaud in a giallo film, I'm pretty sure you can assume it'll be good. The first death in this doesn't even happen until 54 minutes in, which is kind of, like, ridiculous in my opinion. Should have been earlier, usually is in giallo, but it's fitting that it ends up being Porter who was killed because he seems the most suspicious of everyone, and the most, like, a bad person. And I guess he just dies from a heart attack, basically, from looking at this, who we're supposed to assume is like a red-eyed zombie chauffeur, which is kind of a funny statement. But, yeah, I guess he just, like, has a heart attack. I think it's even said later by someone that he had a heart attack. So, lame death, though, let's be honest. With how much they focus on the problematic relationships of... Who's the main character? Elsa, sorry. Because it autocorrected to Zelda. I was like, I don't know. But with how much they focus on Elsa's problematic relationships with men, being her father and her husband, it made me think that Martha was gravitating to her because she would be able to influence her into, becoming witch-like her. Because that's the way I thought it was going for a while, is because of the story about Martha's mother being a witch. I thought she was going to end up being witchy, especially because they keep showing her face with, impending doom music, and you're just like, it makes her seem like she's evil and in, a supernatural way. So I thought that Martha was paying particular attention to Elsa because she was kind of trying to influence her, because she, got the information from her talking about, terrible relationship with her father, terrible relationship with her husband, and then she's just kind of like, see, don't you want to be like an empowered woman, like me, like a witch? But it doesn't go that way, also fine, but that would have been cool as well. Pretty good scene with Elsa finding the body of who is supposed to be Mrs. Tremont on the meat hook in the basement. And then you find out later that she's not actually dead because they stumble upon her and she had been taking sleeping pills, so she was just passed out. But that was a cool scene. It looked really good with her in the basement finding that hanging body. That was cool. You find out later it's a fake body, which, man, Ernest went to lengths to make sure that he pulled this trick off. Since Fred's the only person who could achieve anything in the film, shouldn't he have been the one to handle suppressing the fire that breaks out in the basement? Because Elsa had fainted and she had a torch with her, and then it, starts this fire in the house. So Fred goes and he picks up Elsa and takes her upstairs, and then just tells Laura, do what you can to take care of this fire. He should have handled the fire, because he's the only one who handles anything in the film, and she should have just, stayed with Elsa, because Elsa wasn't in any immediate danger at that moment. I mean, not more so than Fred and Laura. I don't know, just my thoughts. I do like that Fred acts like he's gonna go outside for help, but then he sneaks outside and sneaks around outside instead, and then that's when he finds that car that almost hit him on the road earlier, and then that's when things start to unravel, because he also finds the recordings of the noises and stuff that were supposed to be freaking people out. So he does his detective work, as only Fred could, apparently, because of how he is in this film. But yeah, I like that, how he was just like, I'm going for help, and then he just immediately goes behind a bush and starts sneaking around. I was like, sweet, love this. Good sequence with Mrs. Tremont's head and Eveline slowly coming after Elsa and Laura. You obviously find out that it's the fake severed head that is being controlled by Mr. Tremont. So I guess Mrs. Tremont wasn't so much in on the scheme. But then you also see the prosthetics that are on Martha to make her look like her mother Eveline that are, slowly coming after Elsa and Laura. That was a cool sequence. It looked really good. Pause real quick. Horror hydration. Throat gets so dry, The fight scene that breaks out between Fred and this chauffeur is really well shot. I thought it was very chaotic. And that's what you want to do. You want to make those scenes kind of have them be close up and real rough and tumble, because it feels like a legitimate fight. It feels like a chaotic, flailing fight. And I thought that scene was done pretty well for that reason. Pretty good reveal of the elaborate ruse by Martha and Mr. Tremont. I like that, and then I like also that it's further revealed that it's not just them, that they're doing this because they're being paid by Ernest to make it happen, which I did assume Ernest was going to end up being involved in some capacity, because he's introduced early on in the film, and then he's just not seen forever. So I was like, why would they introduce this character if he's not going to end up being used at some point? So the whole time in my mind, I'm like, he's going to come into play in some way, and not in a good way. So I was right about that. But I didn't see the Mrs. Tremont or Mr. Tremont and Martha thing coming, so that was cool. Of course, Ernest was behind it because he was shown in the beginning and then not again for a long time. I already said that. Elsa really lights Ernest up with the gun. She just unloads on him. I like that sequence. And she's seeing her father the whole time as she's shooting him, just unloading on him, which seems to point to Elsa's father and husband basically in her mind being one and the same, because they're both the same type of abusive to her. They're very controlling and like snide people with her. They treat her like she's a little girl, like she's not a woman, like she can't make her own decisions. And that's built pretty well throughout the film with the flashbacks of, you know, the issues she had with her father, but also the issues she had with Ernest. So I think it's cool and it's fitting at the end that when she's shooting Ernest, she's seeing her father in that, you know, George Regard. And it just, it keeps going back and forth, and it's like they are one and the same. You know, she married her father, in essence, and all she's known has been abusive relationships. And her unloading this gun, it at the moment is taking care of both the most abusive people who are in her life, and she's freeing herself at this moment, which is part of the reason she then just has like this complete meltdown after that, which is a cool shot as well. That was the one that's done like from above, and you're just seeing like all the bodies scattered in the room around her, and she's just like on her knees, just like bawling it out. That's a great way to end the film. It looked great. Not how they actually ended the film, where they're just showing like Fred on his motorcycle going away. Like, I would have done Fred on the motorcycle first and then ended on that shot from above with all the bodies and Elsa, because that's more powerful. That has a lot more impact. So it's a good one. Once again, really good camera work in this one. Very visually pleasing. I really liked how that stuff was handled in the film. No nudity. I was shocked, because giallo films usually are going for the nudity because there's always that sexuality. There's obviously a sexual aspect to the film, like all giallo has, but there's no nudity. There were moments where women were getting naked, and I was like, okay, here it comes, because this is giallo, and they, you know, made sure that they were always covered. So I don't have a problem with it, but I just think it's interesting, because most giallo just wants to get to the nudity, and a lot of them do it very early on in the film too. So much of this, hear me out on this, so much of this reminds me of Scooby-Doo. Just think about the premise, like thick fog, thick mysterious fog, going to like this old mansion. It's, you know, it seems like it's something supernatural, but it's not. Like, this is totally Scooby-Doo, right? This is an adult Scooby-Doo. I'm not saying that to demean it. I like that. I've always loved Scooby-Doo. I watched it as a child, and I thought it was good. I think it's still good. I do, again, love the set design. Reminds me of Kill Baby Kill by Mario Bava. And the last thing I need to say, this is a very small thing, but I love Porter's jacket in the beginning. It looked like it was like wrinkly black velvet. That thing was awesome. I want to know how to get a hold of something like that. Well, maybe I don't. I don't think I could pull something off like that, but I appreciate it. I appreciated it on Porter. It was great. So anyway, those are all my thoughts on The Murder Mansion. Obviously, very pleasantly surprised with this one. I really enjoyed it. Out of 5 stars, I'm giving it 3.5 stars. It's not like an amazing film, but because out of the pantheon of all films, 3.5 stars is a very good rating, especially for an old giallo film. This is a pretty solid one. Would be interested in hearing your opinions on this. Put it in the comments. Love it, hate it, in between. Just give me like a sentence or two telling me why. Because I like a little bit of justification, not just, you know, if you comment and you're just like, I like it, I don't like it, I'm not going to respond to that, because there's like nothing to respond to really. But do me a quick favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate that. Also hit the notification bell button. Also, if you could tell me, how did the lighting thing go? You know, obviously I can change the colors too, so if there are any color combinations you think are good, or if you think this isn't working the best, you know, just give me your input, because I can tweak things, obviously, or just go back to the way it was as well. But hopefully this is an interesting visual thing and it wasn't too distracting. But anyway, thanks everyone for checking out this review video, and until next time, keep it brutal.